Hello, I'm Tom Bird. In this video we're going to be looking at the deadly method of washing lining. So what is washing lining? Washing lining is where you use a buoyant fly, normally on the point, to suspend two flies or one fly higher up in the water column. And the reason it's called a washing line is when you put the buoyant fly on and then you have some weighted nymphs or buzzers on the droppers, you get a U-shaped profile, and those droppers are then pegged out on the washing line. So originally the washing line was invented using a booby on the point and a booby on the top dropper, and then you'd have a single nymph in the middle. And the idea was it was designed for fishing over weed beds, shallow water, where you needed to have the nymph suspended over the weed, and you might have only had 2 or 3 feet of water clearance to do that, and you needed those 2 boobies to help suspend the nymph. Now this has moved on. More often than not, it's a single buoyant fly on the point, whether that be a booby, a dry fly, or a foam arse blob, and then you have some either buzzers, dowelbacks, crunchers, muskins, any nymph on the droppers. Now you don't necessarily have to always have nymphs. You can have hoppers, something, a sunk hopper tied on a heavy hook, but that's the idea behind it. Now the reason it's so effective is when the fish are feeding higher in the water column, it helps to bring those nymphs higher up in the water and close to the surface for a longer period of time. Now you can fish it on any line really, anything from a floater all the way down to sort of various lengths, midge tips. Nowadays we've got midge tips going from 3 foot, 6 foot, 12 foot, 15 foot, and basically depending which line you fish depends on how deep you're going to let that U-shaped washing line descend in the water. Now if you're using a floater, you're going to be fishing in the top few feet really effectively. If you drop down to a midge tip, that U-shape will sink down lower in the water column, and the longer the midge tip and the slower you fish it, the deeper it's going to sink down in that water column. So let's talk about the setup for a washing line. I like to have 8 feet for my first flight, so if I need to change line, it's easily done. However, a basic setup would be 5 feet between all your flies, giving a 15-foot total leader. So today, my setup, I've got a 10-foot 7-weight rod. I've got the Sage R8 core because it's my personal rod and it's my favourite. And then I've teamed that with one of the new Rio 3-foot hovers. Now the reason I've done that is it's quite nice conditions really. It's overcast. I think the fish are going to be quite high in the water column. The dries have been working really well recently, but it is quite gusty and windy. So I'm hoping that the 3-foot hover tip will just bed in and stop the flies from getting dragged around if the boat crabs ever so slightly. I've then got 2 crunchers. These are the new ones from Fulling Mill. So this is the black and red cruncher, and then I've got one of the Gangly Nemo crunchers, which has got some hoppy legs on it on the top dropper. And then on the point I've gone for one of the barbless fabs. So let's get fishing and see how we get on. So just get that out. So there's actually a fish moving right in front of us. So let's see if we can cut this with the fab and see if we can encourage him to eat after that on the nymphs. Just moving a little bit away from us. So just cast that out, not very far. Just give it a couple of pulls just to straighten it up. Maybe entice him onto the fab, and then we'll just start a slow figure of 8. Now one of the key things is to hold the fly line just a little bit above the water and watch that looper line. So that acts like a swing tip in coarse fishing. You'll see any takes off the end of the rod before you'll feel them in your hand. And you're just watching that. You can see now I've got a little bit of bend in the line, which means that I'm not quite in full contact, so I'm going to do a little mend towards the engine and just draw out any slack. That also helps to impart a little bit of motion into the flies and can often encourage the fish to take. So again, just a slow figure of 8, watching that loop. Now we're coming towards the end of the cast. I know it was only a short cast, but this is a lot of the time where people get into tangles and lose confidence in fishing the washing line. So if I was to just pull those flies up out of the water now, what would happen is the fab, which is sunk down, there's no tension on the fly. As it comes up through the water, gets to the top, and the surface tension grabs hold, it'll cause the rod to load, so bend, and then as it pulls out, it'll basically cause the rod to cast and chuck a really tight loop over the top of the head, causing the leader to tangle up. So we don't want that. So what I'm going to do is go into the hang. Also perfect for fishing these flies. We're giving the fish a last chance to eat them. And then what I'll do is I'll roll cast. While I'm doing it, just shoot a bit of line so it's got a bit more weight to help pull the flies out. Now they're all lay in front of me, and I can just go into an overhead cast if the line's not tangled around the fuel can. Let's move that out of the way. Pull a little bit more line off. Fish just out in front of us, just moving there. Cast that line out there. Pull a bit more because it's a bit further away than that. Straighten her up, and then we'll just go into that slow finger release again. There's a few fish popping up in front of us. So we've moved a bit, we're just down sort of in front of the outlet, and we're seeing lots of fish in the surface. So what I've done, so I've changed to a floater. I'm going to cast quite short, keeping the flies higher in the water. I've also changed to a cat sparkler booby that'll just help to keep the flies higher in the water again. Still with the same nymphs that the two crunchers I started with. So I'm going to cast this out, give it a pop as soon as it lands, and keep it quite short and see how we get on. That one, I just saw the line actually just slide away. I thought I was a bit too eager, but just shows the dividends of actually watching the line. This one's taken the, oh, it's come off. He did take the gangly cruncher on the top dropper. Make sure that hook's alright. So just pays to watch that line. So never actually felt him, just watch the line start to slide away. It's probably a little bit too eager. So let's get the flies back out there, give it another go. So again, 45 degrees off. The Rio Gold Elite, which is 3 colours. So you've got the head, the sort of handling mark, which shows when you've loaded the line, depending on your casting ability. When you get to the yellow, it starts to let you know that you're loading the rod. And I'm just fishing the olive and the yellow bit, so the actual running line is on the reel. And that'll just help to keep the flies really high in the water. Just a little knock then on the hang. Just got to, yeah, there we go. Got him on the hang. I know we're on barbless hooks because we're on catch and release, but 2 fish we've lost now. Let's see if we can actually get one to the boat. Same routine. the end of the video. I hope you've enjoyed it, picked up some hints and tips on washing lining. As you've seen today, the fish are really high in the water, so hopefully you've learned how to keep the flies right up there washing lining on a floater. If you've got any questions, just comment below. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with all the latest hints and tips and videos coming out during the course of the season, and hope to see you out on the water soon.